Well, good morning. I'm meteorologist Alan Matthew here with a morning discussion regarding today's severe weather potential. All right, let's first locate the position of our low pressure center. The low pressure center overnight and yesterday moved through the Four Corners region and then through the Texas-Oklahoma Panhandle region, and that's kind of still the area where it's located right now. It's starting to move more to the northeast, and that's going to take it through this area right here as we get into this afternoon. So, the track of the low at this point is pretty certain. It's high confidence. Okay, here's a look at the composite reflectivity across the southeastern region this morning, and you can see we've had a couple showers that have popped up and are moving into Alabama. We also have a little bit of a line of weaker showers back to the west that is formed, and we'll be watching that closely. Here's a closer look at the radar. Again, most of these are just light showers at this point. There is no strong storms or severe storms out there. We won't see any stronger storms until later in the day, probably around afternoon, early afternoon. Here's a look at visible satellite. This is important because one of the things I'll be watching very closely today will be the cloud coverage, and there is a little bit of pocket of sunshine there in the southern portion of the state. You can see the rain is overlaid on top of that, and the dew points here are already getting into the mid-60s, so 64-degree dew point is shown right there, and you've got some lower 60s, so you really have a nice tongue of moisture pushing up into the delta, and here are the blue arrows are the wind and how they're blowing that up in there. So let's talk about the nature of the threat for today. What kinds of severe weather will be possible as we go throughout the day? Here's the new SPC outlook issued around midnight last night. This shows where the enhanced risk region has been moved. This still includes quite a few counties along the Mississippi-Alabama border in the northern two-thirds of the state. Places like Corinth, Tupelo, Amory, Aberdeen, West Point, Starkville, Columbus, going further down the road to Scuba and Macon, and then down towards Meridian, Mississippi. Places like that are going to be in the enhanced area of risk, and this also extends over into north central Alabama, including the city of Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. Vernon also. You guys will all be in this. And then the yellow area is the slight risk. So let's talk about what enhanced means again. Enhanced means there's a possibility for numerous severe storms that will be more persistent and or widespread with a few intense. That's the character of the weather. And at the bottom here we can see that ways that you can get an enhanced risk issued are from the possibility of a few tornadoes. Also, you could have the potential for damaging winds across the area and locations. And this suggests that maybe there could even be several reports of wind damage as we go throughout this event. And then finally, you could have damaging hail between 1 to 2 inches. And that would all be criteria to help you meet the enhanced risk. I think a lot of this is because we do have a potential for some tornadoes to develop. Probably mostly the weaker variety, but a stronger one or two cannot be ruled out. And also the winds. We are expecting the potential for some strong, maybe even damaging winds, and I think that's why we're in the enhanced risk area. Here's my severe threat index. I updated this last night, and I'm not really going to change it. I left the winds at a 7 on a scale of 10. And I moved the tornado down. I mentioned yesterday morning I had a difficult time between 6 and 7. Well, I've decided to move that down to a 6. I felt it was a little bit too high, so I'm just going to put it at like a flat 6. It's not that I necessarily think the tornado threat has diminished. I just believe that my number was a little bit too high. The hail threat is low. The flash flooding threat also low, but some localized areas of flash flooding can be expected. And lightning don't talk about it enough, but please be aware of lightning. And, if thunder roars, go indoors. Or if you see lightning, go indoors. Let's talk about uncertainty with the forecast. There still remains some uncertainty. One thing is cloud coverage. How many clouds, and how thick will the cloud coverage be as we go throughout the course of the morning? This is critical because we don't want to see a whole lot of clearing with sunshine spilling through to the surface. That would actually be a bad thing today. That would help the atmosphere to stabilize. And, again, I showed you that image earlier. The clouds are peeking out in the delta. So it's a delicate balance between a mix of sun and clouds. You don't want too much sunshine because that could, if you get too much sunshine, that could initiate convection earlier. And you don't want there to be, if you want there to be more clouds if you don't want severe weather. So a mix of sun and clouds would be it would be pretty bad. The model here, this is the RAP model, 925 millibars, so this is not at the surface, showing the cloud coverage across the state of Mississippi as we go throughout the course of the morning. This is around lunchtime, but it is showing maybe a chance that's back to the west. There are pockets maybe where there's a little bit lower cloud coverage, so that's something we're going to have to watch very closely. And again, here it goes to 19Z. This is about 1 p.m. and it's still showing maybe somewhere in central Mississippi there could be some partial clearing, perhaps. Surface moisture is another question. Surface dew point temperatures are projected to get in the mid-60s and even the upper 60s as we get into this afternoon. It's perfectly feasible that we could hit 66, 67, maybe even 68 or 69 dew points on the high end. Current analysis shows us, again, the dew points are already surging up into the delta, into the mid-60s, so we'll have to see how that evolves and moves over here. But the moisture certainly in place. Now you just need something to initiate the release of that massive amount of energy into the upper atmosphere. Let's talk about location. Alright, this is a graphic I used yesterday. I didn't really change it because I felt like it kind of fit pretty good. I overlaid an area of risk there that you can't really see, so let's take a closer look. So here's my general thinking on the area of greatest risk for severe weather today, and I've used some coloration here. Golden Triangle region, we're really in the heart. We're in the fray. We're in the middle of this. And because of that, we're going to have to be extremely weather alert going into today. And then I've also included some areas to the north. It's very possible they could see some as well. And off to the south, there is a threat for severe weather. But I think the primary tornado threat is going to be focused kind of in this region here. So Oktibbeha, Lowndes, Clay, Monroe counties, and maybe even some portions of southern Itawamba, southern Lee counties getting in on this. And, northern Macon. I don't want to get too much more specific than that. But that gives you a general idea. Places like West Point, Starkville, Columbus, Macon, Aberdeen, Amory, Hamilton, Mississippi, West Point, Mississippi. You guys need to pay very close attention to the weather. And if you live anywhere even remotely close to those areas, you need to be paying attention to the weather as we go into this afternoon as well. And this extends over into Alabama. That's why I put the arrows there. Timing. I'm going to walk you through several images here. First one here is at 3 p.m. 4 p.m. 5 p.m. 6 p.m. And then we jump to 8 p.m. Alright. So, I don't want you to get attached to anything in particular on these images. These are just simulations of what the radar may look like. But this development here, and especially right here, is suspect for the development of tornadoes. We're going to have to watch this very closely to see how things evolve. But at 3 p.m., these would most likely be discrete supercells here. Here's the main line of storms forming back to the west. This is going to need a lot of attention. I can't stress that enough. And as we go forward here, you can see how those kind of begin to intensify as they move this direction. That would bring them, Again, the locations here aren't exact, but they're going to be very close to the GTR, somewhere in this area. So we're going to have to watch that to see if that develops. And then here we go. Again, this is about 5 p.m., and this makes a lot of sense. So that's, the area of most concern for me is right in this area here where we could see discrete cells, and here comes the line really starting to take shape now. And as the line forms, that's going to be kind of a wind threat there in and of itself. There it goes towards 6, and then zooming forward to 8, clearly the line is formed, and these storms here have moved off to the north and east into northwestern Alabama. So discrete cells ahead of the line need to be watched very carefully, and then we'll have a main line coming through, and you can see how this all evolves during the afternoon. I walked you through the time. So really the threat, I think, begins first early afternoon, perhaps as early as 1 p.m. I'm put down here 2 to 3 p.m. and lasting into the late night hours because of that secondary, that main line that kind of forms behind it that has to come through. That'll be late night, probably 11 p.m. through 2 a.m., maybe as early as 10 p.m. when that gets through here. I'm not going to go any more specific than that. All right, this was brought to my attention. I thought this issue had been resolved. It has not. The NOAA weather radio antenna and transmitter tower has not been fixed, and this services part of our area of greatest risk here. You can see Lowndes County, Octaba Hall, Clay County are all in this. So if you live in any of these counties here in northeast central Mississippi, the signal from the tower is going to be intermittent, which means you may not receive a critical warning. So you need another source of information to be your first line of information. I would recommend 1 or 2, and I wouldn't put the weather radio first today because of that issue. All right, here's the bottom line. Be situationally aware of the weather as we go throughout the course of this morning and into today. Have a timely, accurate source of information. Follow one of your local meteorologists. I will be doing my best to keep up with this, but at the moment, I still have to go to school. I have to go to class. Class has not been canceled at state, and a decision will not be made regarding classes until around early afternoon, 11 a.m. So I honestly don't know how much I'll be able to cover this. I also have a class 2 to 3:15, which means I may not be able to do very much. So please follow a local meteorologist that can give you information. The forecast will be subject to some minor tweaks and refinements going ahead, depending on how things evolve. From here on, we could see the threat diminish on a small time scale. The tornado threat may actually go down, but it could also begin to elevate slightly. That's why you need to monitor things. The track of the low is high confidence. General timing window, I just gave it to you. Again, Tuesday early afternoon through late night is the time frame. All modes of severe weather are possible, including a few tornadoes, with perhaps 1 or perhaps 2 stronger tornadoes possible. Most of these, I think, the highest risk would be for the weaker tornadoes, like EF0, EF1. EF2 is possible, but it's not as likely. And EF3, I'm highly skeptical we would see an EF3 tornado. So that's perhaps the good news here. Damaging winds are a concern. As that main line takes form back to the west, that will, of course, bring a chance for some damaging winds. There could be some strong downburst winds with some of these storms out ahead of the line. And today, in general, the wind is going to be moving pretty quickly. So if you're in a high-rise vehicle and you're traveling east to west or something like that, the wind is really going to make your life difficult. So be careful. Slow down and stay in control of your vehicle. Hail is a low-end concern, and heavy rainfall is also a low-end concern. But there is, a possibility for some localized flash flooding. All right, there's a look at the weather. Again, this is probably the last video discussion I'll do before this event transpires. Again, I'll be updating as much as I can, but please follow somebody in your local area for accurate and timely information. And I hope that you guys will remain weather alert as we go into today and this afternoon.